Welcome everybody to the third episode of Parkitect campaign, and in this episode we are actually going to be working on Victoria Lake. And so the description for this says, with flat empty land that up and ample space for expansion, the surrounding area of Victoria Lake lends itself perfectly for a recreational destination. It is your task to turn this beautiful nature setting into a lakeside amusement park. So the goals for this scenario is to have at least 300 guests in your park, have no loan debts, and the no loan debt is actually going to be kind of challenging since I did use it in the other two. The first one was because I needed it, and the second one was optional. So I am getting a little bit better with my loans. And then we have three optional goals for this one, which is to have at least 100 guests in your park, have at least 200 guests in your park. And those two are kind of don't make any sense because you have to have 300 guests to get the goal. And then the other optional is to complete all non-optional goals by September of year 2. So let's load into this scenario here as our music stops. So we are greeted with this kind of main street, which I will probably turn into a main street. And then we have this kind of grand architecture, which I will definitely incorporate into this main street at least. And then we have this huge lake. So I will try and use this as a main street, and then why don't we see what rides we have here? So our calm rides, we have a carousel, a Ferris wheel, and a spiral slide. So not many calm rides, but we do have a good amount of thrill rides with the Gravitron and Wipeout, which we've had in both the scenarios before. And we have a new one, which is the swinging ship, which will actually go great right here at the end of our main street, and a top scan. So that is something different, and I don't know where that would go if we use one. And our coasters, we have two, which the junior coaster and a wooden coaster. And I think a wooden coaster would go great in this area. Um, and then I think I'm actually going to use this miniature railway. Kind of. I think we're going to put like a station here and then maybe like a station back here. I think that'd be kind of cool. But without further ado, let's get into the time lapse. All right, before I talk about anything else in this park, I want to mention something that I forgot to say in the intro. We actually did get this water ride, which is the paddle boat. It's kind of like those swans, and I want to incorporate those into the lake since it's kind of makes sense to put something in there. Um, the only other thing that's going to be in that lake is going to be that Viking ship. So I'm going to utilize that probably on the back side of the park once we're done with the front entrance. So anyway, what we're doing right now, or as I said, we're going to do some type of main downtown street. And I wanted to try and keep this architecture style. And I believe it's actually Victorian architecture. And that would make sense because it's called Victoria Lake. Um, but right now we are just kind of making the outline for these buildings. I only have a restroom stall on the one side, and that is because I didn't want to have to buy another depot when the backstage area is hooked up to one side already. So I just put all of the vendors on one side and made a really long like condo building, I guess you could call it. And then on the other side, it's just kind of a standalone building with a little bit of an elevated area. But something that I did have a little bit of trouble imitating was the color, and I did try my best to try and find it. For some reason, the little tweezer thing wasn't working, so I don't know. It's probably the building is locked, so I can't like pick and pull from that building. So all I did, I just tried to match it as best as I could, and then I used that color for the rest of the park. So at least the park will match. And then anyway, we went with some alternating roof directions. So some are going east to west, and some of them are going north to south. And then we put some trims in, and that is practically it for this building. Besides some spires that I really don't like, but after this, we're going to go in and do some of the backstage area. And right now you can probably see that the park isn't running, and that is because there's no rides in it. So I just kind of kept it closed. But once there's a ride in there, we will get the park running so we can make just a little bit of money at least. And we're actually going to expand to the area behind the restroom stall, and that is the opposite area in which I said I wanted to put our wooden coaster, and that is okay since we're gonna do that after the mid-course break. But right now we are doing some spires that I don't know if I like 100%, so we might go back and do that after the break or in the break. But here we are just connecting the area, kind of making it so people can't see the backstage area. And then I kind of just dressed up the entrance with like a little rock archway and some trees. Surprisingly, when I got this park running, people were not complaining about the decoration in this area, and there was actually really low amount of vandalism, which is smart. But right here, we're putting in some people, and I just started some research on some calm rides since we don't have much of those compared to anything else. We're probably only gonna make two coasters in this park, so that is basically going to be it for roller coasters. But we'll make one this section and then one in the next section. And then here I was actually experimenting with some of the curbs because they can actually make it so your benches can be placed in the middle of paths, which is kind of cool. And we have placed our first ride, which is the Viking ship. And now the park is running, you can see. And something with this park, I think it's actually quite a rainy park. So I do have an umbrella vendor, and there's actually going to be a lot of queue covering. So there's a queue cover for the Viking ship. It's kind of like a tarp, kind of pirate tarp or something. And then I put this pergola in. It's not really protection, but it's just some nice detail. And we put in our next ride, which is this Ferris wheel. And I've learned that Ferris wheels need a long queue. So I made it quite long, all the way to the end, other side of the pergola, actually. I think those are pergolas, right? I think those are pergolas. And then the exit is actually on the other side of the building. So now we're going into our very first coaster, which is this children's coaster. So I actually never built this, have never built this type in Parkitect. I built the mini coaster in the first park, but I never built the children's coaster from Chanute Airfields. Instead, I made the vertical drop coaster, which we are going to take a little bit of inspiration from in the queue and station. So I will talk about that once we get our layout done. But basically, children's coasters have a bunch of helixes and turns. They're not really pretty whippy, I guess, if that's a word. Um, and then we just have a bunch of helixes coming to the end. There's only going to be one train running on this coaster. I didn't find the need to have extra, and I don't think it's actually possible to have extra in this coaster. So it comes straight into the station, and I did actually utilize the S-bend technique since was not lining up perfectly. And the idea behind this coaster was to just fill in the space on this area, so I didn't have to use a bunch of trees and stuff, and to end the area over here. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. Um, what we're doing with this station, we're going to have the station building connected to a queue, and the queue is actually going to be fully covered, and it's all going to be all look like one building. So I kind of learned that from the Chanute Airfield vertical drop coaster, which is going to be uh, kind of one whole building. The queue in Chanute Airfields, though, wasn't fully covered. This one is, and that is because it is a pretty rainy park. So after that, we are going to be going on and trying to fill in that area between the Viking ship and that station after we put in this fence so nobody can get hurt. But by the way, my research had finished by this time, so I actually was trying to fill it in with our new ride, which is this wave swing or wave swinger or something. It's one of those chair chair swinging rides, which are actually pretty intense. I don't understand how that can be considered a calm ride, but it works. So we put that over on the other side, and that's going to lead into the other side of the park. And then to fill in that area that I said I wanted to fill in, we're basically just going to put in our a restroom stand. And the reason for that is I didn't want to waste money on a um, depot. So that is basically the ending of this time lapse. So after this, we're going to be going into our mid course really quick. And this little restroom block is just going to be the little dividing part. And then after that, it's just going to lead into the kind of bridge that goes over the lake and stuff. So that part is just going to be mostly scenery. And then on the other side, we're going to have a bunch of thrill rides that we're going to create, like our wooden coaster and everything. But I will show you guys all that in the mid course after we finish up this little area in the time lapse. So I'll see you guys in a couple of seconds. Okay, so it looks like I loaded in the rain again because it's always raining in this map. But we are basically at 130 guests, so I actually hit the first goal, or the non-optional goal, which is to have uh, 100 people in the park. So the next one is to have 200 people in, and then the game goal is to have 300. So we're almost there to the second goal. We have about 70 people left to get there, which isn't too bad. The Ferris wheel actually isn't as popular as it was in other sessions, but nothing really is too popular. The main street seems to be getting good amount of people in there, and that's basically it. So why don't we take a ride on this junior coaster? Let's move this really quick. We gotta wait for this. And then we're actually kind of low on money, so I probably will hopefully let it run a little bit and maybe get a little bit more money so we can make this wooden coaster, or just make the wooden coaster not a lot of money. Oh, why isn't this falling? There we go. So it just comes up this lift hill. We're actually almost running a full train, which is pretty awesome. And then going down this first one, first helix, it's kind of slow. And then it kind of hits a little bunny hop, and then helixes around it's the same side, and then does a little kind of S bend, I guess. It's not really an S bend, it's kind of just a snake move, and then a big helix, and then into the station. So that is basically it for the roller coaster. I didn't change any of the colors to it, but the plan to move on is to obviously make our big wooden coaster over in this area. I was gonna put in a transportation ride over in this area. I don't know if I'm gonna do that anymore. I might still put one right here. It just depends. But I know that I want to put the roller coaster, and then the swans ride or the paddle boats is probably gonna come over in this area. That's basically it for the rides, and I'll probably put the top scan in. But over on this side, it's just going to be basically scenery, nothing too big over here. And that should be basically all we need to get everybody in here. So why don't we jump back into a time lapse and see what we can get going up in this place. Okay, so we are going to hit this session off with a bang, starting off with this wooden coaster, and it is actually going to take out the rest of the money that we have, so that is going to pose some problems later on, and I'll talk about that later on in the episode. But with this layout, we kind of have a regular turnaround going into the lift hill, and then another turnaround going into the first drop. And then after that, there's also going to be another turnaround where it goes into this double down over the beginning part going into the lift hill. It goes right between the lift hill and the station. I kind of thought that'd be good interaction with the station and the ride itself. And then it goes into another bunny hop hill and then goes into this huge helix. This layout is quite short. I kind of kept it short, one for money and two because I didn't think it needed to be that long. Then it just kind of curves back into the station. So there's nothing too crazy about this ride. I will say that I can run 2 trains on it and the operations for it are very good. So that's really all you need for a coaster like this. So after this, we're going to go in and make our queue, which I did kind of mess up a little bit, so we will go back and do some of that later on. So it just kind of wraps around the terrain a little bit, and that's a mess up that I made. I should have tried to keep it as straight as possible instead of trying to curve it around the terrain. So after that, we are kind of really low on money, so we're actually going to go in to the village and do some touch-ups. But that's just going to be some windows and other things. But something that I didn't mention in the beginning of this time lapse, it's actually going to be quite small since we didn't actually get much done since there was actually a lot of waiting, so I cut a lot of it out. But right here, I'm kind of waiting for $600 so I can place this carousel down, and that took a little bit of a little while. But something that I used to gain a lot of money, and you'll see that once we hit a big cut, is gonna be advertising. I don't do it on screen, but advertising actually helped the popularity of rides. And then the bigger rides that cost more, I could um, cost more. I could have them pay more. So here I am finally being able to place the carousel, and this queue isn't going to get changed, but I did have to do a little bit of terraforming as well. But hopefully a lot of this will be able to get covered up with like bushes and stuff. So after this, we're gonna go in, and there was actually a lot of vandalism in this park, so we're actually gonna have to go in and fix all of that. I guess the game was saying that there was a group of vandals or something roaming around, so after I fixed all this, I placed a couple more security guards, and then I went back and fixed some more because the vandalism was actually insane, and I kind of just forgot about it. So that is practically it for vandalism after this. We finally get them out of the park. But there's going to be a huge cut right here, and that is because I have a lot more money now because I decided to wait a long time. And in the live portion, I will actually tell you guys what the effects of waiting did, and you'll see that later on when we get our little confetti and stuff. So we actually placed the boat ride down, trying to get the swans. I know I wanted to place it in there. I said I wanted to place it in the back of the park, but I couldn't because nothing's back there, so I just decided to put it in here. And then I put the top spin in, and then we're doing a little bit of foliage work. But as we near the end of this time lapse, we're gonna finish up a couple more things with this little bathroom stall. So now we have three, one in the middle, one on the right side, and one on the left side. And then we're gonna do this little um, kind of wooden station. It's just a couple of poles with some roof on it, but it's. I didn't know how to blend it in with the theme, so that's what I did. I don't know how well it fits, but it works. But anyway, we are nearing the end of this time lapse, so if you guys, well, no, we're gonna ride this wooden coaster in the second, so stay tuned. Alright, everybody, we have just completed the goal for this Parkitect Victoria Lake session. We have 300 people in here, we have no loan debts. The one thing that we didn't hit was this non-optional goal, which is by the end of September year 2. We're actually in February year 4, and that is really just because of how long it took to recuperate my money. But as I said a couple of seconds ago, we're going to kind of look into this section over here that we just worked on. It kind of looks a little bit better. The operations for this actually aren't that good, but it just keeps a long line, which is nice. Topspin is actually a pretty popular ride. The carousel is probably the least popular over here. And this wooden coaster actually seems to be pretty popular. So, as I said, you can see how we changed this. The queue used to come over towards this way and then up and around. It just now comes straight back and over and back. So why don't we ride this wooden coaster? Okay. So as people load on, and let me move this, please. We'll get on here. Wrong coaster. Okay. So, and of course, weather purposes shuts the ride down. So why don't we speed this up so weather's leaves. As I said, and you've probably seen from the time lapse, the weather in this park is pretty bad. So I'm super glad that I put in that umbrella shop. You see a bunch of people with umbrellas. The Viking ship ride isn't all that popular. The most popular ride that we've had in this park is probably this Ferris wheel. It remains to be popular. The queue one time was actually all the way full, which is probably the biggest queue I've had and the longest queue I've had. So let's get onto this ride here, if I can catch it. But you can probably see right here that oh no, wrong coaster, that the operations are actually pretty good, because you have one coaster coming in and one coaster leaving. We'll get on this one. So it's kind of a like knockoff of a traditional wooden coaster, where it kind of turns at the top and then comes down into a big drop and turns again. But then again, there's variation at the end. So this double down actually gets a lot of speed, and this helix does as well. But I think this would be a pretty fun coaster, and we're just gonna wait a second for the next coaster to leave, which it did. So that is basically it for this park. It's pretty nice, I would say. So why don't we save this and head back to the main campaign screen. Oh, it didn't do the little thing that it usually does. Alright, well that's different. So, the little trophy that we got is this big kind of mansion, I guess. And I actually didn't get a gold button here because I didn't hit all the optional goals, which is kind of sad, but that's okay. And the level sprouting off from this is actually Coral Island. So this one has the main goal is having an overall park rating of 70% and having at least 800 park tickets sold. So that's way step up. I've never actually had to do a overall park rating, so that's a bit different. But I think we're gonna go into this Western Roundup and do this episode next, since it seems a little bit easier, and it actually revealed the next one after that, which is this Dusty Delta. But I'll look into that after we finish this Western Park. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you guys next time in the Western scenario.